What's up guys, JV2017 here, and today I'm sharing my overall thoughts on Fallout 4 7 months after release. I never actually reviewed Fallout 4, well I did write about 2,000 words on it, but I wasn't even halfway done with my review and I just never got around to finishing it around launch. And so I thought it would be cool to review the game well after release, 7 months to be exact, after we've all had a chance to really let the game sink in. And as of now, we've had 3 pieces of DLC content, several patches, a new survival mode, and of course console mods. While we still have even more DLC on the way, right now Fallout 4 is the best it's ever been in my eyes, even after playing the game for hundreds upon hundreds of hours. So in this video, I'm going to go over my thoughts on the story, role-playing, exploration, the perk system, and combat. You know, those are the typical things in a Fallout game. And then of course the completely new features that were introduced in Fallout 4. Also, huge spoiler alert, this is not a review you should watch or use if you're deciding whether you want to buy the game for the first time, but in my opinion, it's definitely worth the full retail purchase even still. So stop watching right now if you don't want to get spoiled. My initial thoughts on the narrative were not very good. I pretty much slammed the story in my unreleased review that, I'll never really release, because it just wasn't very interesting or compelling to me at first. But honestly, I don't believe I've ever loved a Bethesda main storyline. Even in Skyrim and Fallout 3, the main quest was never as interesting to me as the variety of side quests that the games offered. Of course, I love the Secret of Cabot House, Confidence Man, USS Constitution with Old Ironsides, and also, of course, the Silver Shroud. Couldn't forget about that. But when I learned that the sole survivor would be spending most of the game searching for their son as the main quest, I was definitely disappointed. I always thought there were larger, more important issues and conflicts in the world than searching for a son that could have easily been dead. Maybe it's because I'm not a father and I don't have that kind of, emotional connection with the game that, other players might have. I don't have a child that I would, connect with in a game, but it just felt like more of the same with Fallout 3. In that game, we spent most of the time searching for family while everything else goes on around the player. After these 7 months, I've come more to terms with respecting Bethesda's narrative. Within their own creative work, they decided to tell the story of the sole survivor searching for their son. This was the story that Bethesda chose to tell, and it's more important to criticize the way that they told it rather than saying they shouldn't have told it at all or should have told us, a different story. That's really not the point, in my opinion. So all that being said, I do feel the narrative had some pacing issues throughout. It was really hard to keep caring about who my son was after 15 hours of playtime. What am I doing with all this time? I'm just searching and searching and searching. Am I even going to find him? Of course, we eventually do find him. And I will say I'm glad that they didn't keep Sean a complete secret until the very end of the game. I think they did a great job with Act 3, which is when you find Sean and go to the Institute. And then the game kind of opens up and allows you to choose where to go after learning Sean, or who Sean became, and also how he's impacted the world, which was pretty significant. Those are really great revelations. I think they did a great job with that. We did get some fairly cookie cutter endings after that. Choose this faction, get this ending like that. And also the choice didn't seem to affect the world at large that much. Maybe a few lines of dialogue about, there's a large explosion, the Institute's gone. That's great, but I don't know. Maybe I'm expecting too much from Fallout, but it would be quite the spectacle to see some of our choices truly reflected in the Wasteland. Some large, sweeping changes that forever change the world in that particular game save. I don't know. Maybe we can cross our fingers for something like that in the future. Moving on, one of the most popular complaints with Fallout 4 is that the voice protagonist didn't allow players to truly roleplay in a Fallout game like they could before. And for the most part here, I agree with this completely, but I'm sure Bethesda knew what they were getting into when they made that decision in the first place. Deciding to go with the voice protagonist was an attempt to make the game more appealing to a broader audience, and also it gave it a more modern feel compared to something like Mass Effect. And I think they succeeded with both of those goals, but at the cost of not allowing people to truly roleplay their own characters. No matter what dialogue you chose, you've either got the nice guy, the sarcastic guy, the inquisitive guy that asks more questions to get more information, or the guy that was a complete dick. And sometimes you could be truly evil, but it wasn't all of the time like in previous games. So you just the element of creating character and really doing whatever you want with that character is for the most part not there. And those 4 options that I mentioned before were about it, and I think that's unfortunate for those that really got into role-playing in the franchise. To be honest, this change didn't affect me that much since I've never really got that lost into a Fallout game. I mean, of course, very immersive. The previous Fallout games were very immersive, and I did get lost playing them for hours, but I was never heavily invested into one character that much, and so this doesn't affect me that much, but I will say I'd like to see Bethesda return to a non-voice protagonist in the future. I think there's so many more upsides to that rather than having a voice protagonist that I really like them to return to that in a future Fallout game. I don't know, some people might think that's backpedaling from what they already did. I still think it's possible for them to go back to what they had before and still have great success. Next up, Fallout 4 has one of the most beautiful open worlds to date, in my opinion. You know, beautiful in its own way, you know, a nuclear post-apocalyptic way. I really love the direction they went, though, in making everything a lot more vibrant and colorful. The muddy greens of Fallout 3 and the overbearing orangey red of New Vegas sometimes made things feel a bit dull, and Bethesda absolutely improved on that this time around. Bethesda also made a conscious design decision to make things a lot less destroyed than they were before. You know, things in Boston weren't as affected. Of course, they certainly were. We had the glowing sea and all of that, but things weren't as bleak as they were in previous games. And I really like the tone shift that they kind of went with this game. Also, Fallout 4 is absolutely huge. It's really huge. The map is certainly big enough for my taste. I know some people were like, I wish it was bigger compared to this map and that map. I think for what they were trying to achieve, the map was perfect. There's also a really nice variety of environments within the map. You've got, you know, ports, which makes sense because we're in Boston, or, you know, the Boston area. We've got quarries, you know, Salem, certain, you know, places, you know, the Witchcraft Museum, a few major settlements. The Glowing Sea, of course, is a really nice location to visit. I really liked visiting a lot of those locations. But my biggest issue with the exploration in this game, though, is the lack of significance for the random locations. At least in my mind, somehow, some way, each random insignificant location had a deeper meaning in the previous Fallout games. Maybe that's also true with Fallout 4, but the world outside the main quest and side quests didn't feel as interesting to me. It could be because of my own nostalgia for the previous games, you know, playing those for the first time, you know, seeing these really messed up scenes, and that's one thing I really love about Fallout is, you know, this is how humanity, you know, this is the depravity that humanity, you know, went into after all of this disaster. And I love coming upon those scenes. It doesn't seem like Fallout 4 really captures that nearly as well as it did before. And again, it could be my nostalgia. I never just got quite lost and intrigued by just wandering around in the Commonwealth compared to the other wastelands. Moving on, Fallout 4 went in a completely different direction with the perk system. Instead of rewarding perks every few levels from a different category, you know, with, you know, just different level unlocks, you know, you get more perks as you leveled up, Bethesda went and created a perk chart that requires a certain amount of special points in order to unlock certain perk ranks. And so you could go and grab, you know, let's say solar powered if you, in the beginning of the game, chose 10 endurance. I don't, you know, advise doing that, but for the most part, I really like the new system. It adds a new sort of meta that you always have to keep in mind when choosing perks, along with a ton more freedom. Like I just explained, you can get to those insane perks if you invest a lot of points in the beginning. And so it really makes you think about your choices, and I really love it. Also, more points overall is definitely a good thing. There's a ton of ranks for each perk, and a lot of the ranks do different things. They don't just modify what's already done, and that was fantastic. I mean, I remember wishing that every single level in previous games offered a perk point, and it was every other level, so I was like, oh, I gotta wait another level to get a new perk, and that's just not there anymore. They have so many perk points, and I think that's definitely a good decision. It was great, in fact. I also love the decision to have no level cap. That always seemed really arbitrary and pointless. That was a great decision as well. But as always, the system isn't completely perfect. There always seems to be a set of 5 perks that completely outclasses the rest, and I always go for them pretty much no matter what, unless I'm really trying to hardcore roleplay a new character or do a build guide for you guys. So, for example, I've got Lone Wanderer, Rifleman, Sneak, and pretty much a good collection of the upper tier luck perks. They're stupidly powerful when combined, and if the goal is to kill things quickly and safely, which, hey, you know, that's not always the goal with a build. You know, you can roleplay and maybe you're not even a killer. Maybe you're a talker and you go for charisma. That makes sense, but you know, if your goal is to kill and do it quickly and safely, then there's no other option if you want the most damage. It just makes, you know, the most sense to go for the best things. And Also, the way they built the perk chart allowed for no wiggle room for future DLC perks, and the way it used to work is that the perks would be added at the very end, when you hit level 30, and then bam, you got some new perks in the higher tier of the game when you're, closer towards the end of the game. Bethesda kind of bypassed that problem completely by just granting perks for completing quests, for example, in Far Harbor instead, but it would have been nice to see the new core perks added to the system, and, that maybe would have switched up the meta. Maybe those 5 perks were not the thing that you always went for. Honestly, this is a problem in previous games too. I mean, Grim Reaper Sprint, you guys remember in Fallout 3, it was stupidly good. And it's kind of the same thing with the combination of perks in this game. So it's not really a complaint with this, Fallout 4 specifically, but kind of a complaint with the game that's always been there. All that being said, building characters in this game is still ridiculously fun, and overall I love the amount of variation with the perk chart, the amount of builds I can make, the amount of characters I can play as. Next, combat might as well be a new feature in Fallout 4. Bethesda apparently recruited help from Bungie to design their FPS mechanics, and boy, did it pay off big time. Fallout 4 handles really, really well as a first-person shooter, and I think it's hard to find a reason why this was a bad thing. Some may say the gunplay turned Fallout 4 into more of an FPS disguised as an RPG, and I do think that they have a point with that. There is certainly more shooting and less RPGing overall in this entry to the series, but I would argue that having great shooter mechanics and a great RPG are not mutually exclusive, characteristics for a video game. I think it's a combination of things that takes away from, that feeling, like the voice protagonist and, of course, the great shooter mechanics. If you think about that, we have less RPG since there's a voice protagonist and more FPS because there's great mechanics. That makes people, feel like Fallout 4 leans more towards FPS than RPG. All in all, I couldn't be happier with the new combat. The slow motion instead of actually stopping time with VATS was also a great decision. I think that makes a lot of sense, especially with the new shooting mechanics. The last portion of my review is going to be talking about new features, and since Fallout 4 is a sequel to Fallout 3, a lot of the things, in the game stay the same, and that's what we expected for the most part. However, there were some completely new features that I haven't mentioned so far in this video, so let's talk about those. And first and foremost is settlements. Unfortunately, they just didn't click with me specifically. I think one of the biggest issues I have is I'd rather be playing the game and going out and doing Fallout things than, and leveling up and making my character better and getting perks and doing typical Fallout things instead of being stuck at my settlement building something. It just didn't make sense to me. Of course, it wasn't required. Settlement building is not required. It's completely optional. And so it doesn't really, impact my overall opinion of this game. But the building system was inspired in part by Minecraft, I believe, according to Bethesda and Todd Howard at E3 last year. That's what they said. And I'm not a huge fan of the way building works in Minecraft, so it was always kind of doomed to fail for me. It wasn't ever going to be my favorite thing to do. And I was also really disappointed with the payoffs of building and focusing on your settlements. Even if I didn't like the building itself, the settlements seemed kind of pointless. I mean, you have to invest so much time into them to max out everything, but you really don't get anything out of it. The highest level traders aren't that great. They don't give you great things. And also half of the legendary traders, or whatever people call them, don't even show up in certain areas unless you get lucky. It's completely guided by RNG. The caps you earn for maxing out a settlement really weren't that significant either. So it just had me asking, why would I even invest so much time in this if I'm not going to get anything out of it? And suffice it to say, I didn't get what I thought I would out of settlements, but that's okay because a lot of people love the building, and ultimately I'm glad Bethesda included the feature. Also, what came along with settlements, I don't know if one came before the other, is the system of junk. Junk was such a great design decision. It makes so much sense. The fact that every single object in the world has a purpose is such a unique feeling for a game. There's so much clutter in games and you don't know why it's there. And in previous Fallouts, you'd pick up things that had no purpose whatsoever. I love that I could pick apart every single object in the game and it all mattered. And I used most of my junk for the more robust crafting system for armor and weapons and things like that, which is pretty much new as well. So let's talk about that. Bethesda provided a solid number of base weapons along with a ton of modifications in this game. Unfortunately, I found myself skipping to the very last upgrade almost every single playthrough because I already knew what was best. It made sense to just go for the maximum damage, the maximum range. Snipers seemed to to be a lot more heavily favored than automatic weapons, for example, semi-auto versus automatic and things like that. I mean, I guess that's just what you get with a fairly linear progression system with mods, but there's a lot of variety with mods. I really did appreciate that. And I think things could have been better in the vanilla game, but things got a lot better with the Tesla rifle, for example, in Automatron, which could be modded to do very particular functions like laying Tesla traps and stuff like that. I would have liked to have seen a lot of that more in the vanilla game, but hey, we didn't get it. That's fine. I was still satisfied with what we got. I've already spoken a lot about console mods, but I just wanted to reiterate the impact that they have on the console Fallout community. And their introduction gives Fallout 4 infinitely more replay value than either of the previous console Fallout games by far. And I'm just so happy that more people get to play around with mods and find new ways to play the game and explore the game that they already play and they already love. I would also call the new survival mode a new feature, even though it's kind of based on hardcore in New Vegas. I think this new survival is its own beast. It is truly a unique way to play and experience the game in a way that I don't think you find in most AAA games. I mean, some AAA games are hardcore or tough, like Dark Souls, for example, but with Fallout 4, I love that we have a tough mode where you do have to look out for these resources. It does feel, as close as we can possibly get with reality and the things you would actually have to worry about in Fallout. It makes total sense making some kind of survival mode in a game where, you are surviving out in this awful, awful world. I really love the addition, and the best part is that it's completely optional. People complain about it, but it's optional. You don't even have to do it. And you can also use mods to modify your own personalized version of the same mode, as I showed off in a recent video. I think that was last week. And so anyways, love the new survival mode. Overall, Fallout 4 is a great, great game. It's not without its faults, and it doesn't stack up to Fallout 3 or New Vegas in my eyes, but hey, my own nostalgia tends to dictate which games I enjoy more, and nothing truly compares to the first time that I wandered the Capital Wasteland or the Mojave Desert. This game is a solid sequel, and it added key features that absolutely need to be in future Fallout games, especially the core FPS mechanics, and Fallout 4 will definitely go down as one of my most played games of all time. So I've shared what I feel about this game. I'd like to hear from you guys in the comments below. How do you feel about Fallout 4 7 months after release, after it's spent this much time sinking in? Let me know what you feel about the game in the comments section below. Alright guys, today I shared my review of Fallout 4 7 months after release. Next time we will cover more Fallout on my channel, so stay tuned for Fallout 4 tips and tricks videos. If you learned something new or enjoyed this video, remember to hit that like button. I would really appreciate it. And don't forget to subscribe for Far Harbor DLC, my survival mode live streams, Bethesda.net mods, and general tips and tricks videos. Talk to you guys next time. Peace.